Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show, where we have the discussions that inform, entertain, and challenge educators to be the change. Each week, I zoom in someone who's making things happen within social, education, and entrepreneurship. I am your host, Dr. Will, and I am here today with Dr. Kati Marton. How are you doing?
I'm great. I always love being here with you.
Well, thank you. You have been have had the most appearances on my show than anyone else.
What an honor.
Well, thank you. The honor is mine. Honor is mine. I interviewed Elise Burden a couple of weeks ago.
I
And,
love her.
she was talking about some of the things that she's been doing and working with you. And I told her, well, she's coming on the show. So it's excellent. So people, we will be talking about this right here, people. All right. Go get your book. All right. Go get your book. Now, you might not have this. Don't be jealous. But it is a awesome book. I've always loved your writing and the ideas you talk about and the strategies. And they're so aligned with what is needed today. But unfortunately, one of the questions goes into it, but we're dealing with a system that does not lend itself to that sort of type of imagination. So for those who are watching the show and for some reason do not know who you are, will you please introduce yourself?
I'd be happy to. Thank you. So my name is Kati Marton, and I am an educator. I started my career as a teacher, a middle school English language arts teacher. I've been a coach, and I've worked at the district office, and more recently I spent time working at the university level. And my work has been a lot in both research and practice, and always making sure that we're conducting research that's informing our next steps, and that we're actually using practice and what's working in schools to inform our research. So I spent 5 years at the University of San Diego in a small center working on research and practice, specifically mobile technology and how technology is impacting our schools and how it could better support students and learners in the classroom. And recently I have moved over to the Buck Institute, where we focus on project-based learning. And I really think there's a perfect blend between the use of technology and project-based learning to really create authentic learner-centered experiences in our classrooms across the country. So I am currently the Director of District Leadership at the Buck Institute and the author of the book, Learner-Centered Innovation, which I'm happy to talk about today.
Yes, people, the questions are coming straight out of this book. You see this learner-centered innovation. You can get it on Amazon. Go buy the book, people.
And I would also add, Dr. Well, and it'll probably come up, but one of the big things, I'm a mom, and my two kids are in school, and it's really given me a new viewpoint of school and education, and made me think differently about the experiences that we create. And my husband is also a teacher, and so I see it from so many different angles.
Yes, and your family made the book from your husband's classroom teaching to your son skiing. It's all.
Oh, you cut out for a minute. Can you say that
again? Are you there now?
I'm here. Yep.
Yeah, I was just saying how your family made the book. Yes. From your husband's classroom to anecdotes about your son skiing. They're in here. So among all of the things that you are, and you are so awesome, you are the author of Learner-Centered Innovation. What was the pain point behind writing the book?
That's a good question. I think that as I started writing and started thinking about what I was seeing in schools, and I spent a lot of time in classrooms, spent a lot of time with leaders at the district office, and seeing my own kids at school and what I wanted for them, the more I wrote and the more I started to see, it was really what if, like what is possible in our education system. I started hearing so many people talk about what they wanted, yet the reality was not necessarily aligning. So the book is really not a ton of answers. It's more research and provocations and ideas and examples about what's possible in our schools today. Not only what people can dream of, but the amazing educators that I've seen and things they're trying to really meet the needs of kids in their classrooms today through changing how teachers learn, changing structures at the district office, and changing their desired outcomes.
Cool. So let's just jump right in here and talk about the tradition of education and the deeply held beliefs of what is defined as good teaching. In your book, you bring up an example of Kodak, how they missed the boat with digital because they were so caught up in celluloid because they were king in that, and they were afraid to take those risks. And now we know that Kodak is obsolete. What is the current state of public education, and where do you see the similarities between what is going on now and with Kodak?
Yeah, so the reason I highlighted that story about Kodak and that vantage point is really to exactly what you're saying, that they were king. They were the ones who were leading in the industry, and because they were so good, they weren't aware of what was next and weren't always thinking about how to evolve and how to lead the industry. They were stuck where they were. And I think that they highlight that they weren't creating the environment where management could take risks. They had kind of figured out the formula and they were going with it. So I see a lot of that in education. The leaders are creating an environment where people can take risks and try new things. They're creating a culture where people are saying, is there a better way to do this? Instead of holding to the, we've always done it this way. And those are the ones who I see really making changes for kids. When we have districts and we have leaders and we have teachers who get very stuck and this is the way we've always done it, we have kids who are still not graduating from high school. We have kids who are not finding their place, who are disengaged. We continue to see the trajectory from 3rd to 12th grade decline as people don't have opportunities to really do things that matter to them. So really that tradition has worked for some people, but we know that our current structures of education have not worked for all kids and are leaving too many people behind.
Now, we know this digital age we live in, and it's just crazy for me because I'm 44 and I remember the VCR being the size of a small suitcase.
Me too.
And TV just cutting off, just like, boop, and you had to wait till 6 in the morning the next day to resume your activities. As digital innovation outpaces our current schooling model and more industries are disrupted by technology, giving way to a new way of thinking that individuals need to do. Please speak to the role of the sort of, as you speak in your book, the evolution of the teacher. And what does that look like?
Yeah, so as we have new tools and resources, I think that the role of the educator really can and should change. While I say that, the best teachers have always focused on creating relationships, have always focused on the learners in their classrooms. The best leaders in schools and in districts are always looking to those that they serve. The resources we have now are different. So no longer is the textbook the only thing that we have to rely on for resources and to move through the curriculum. We have a variety of resources. Information is abundant. It's a matter of making sense of the information that we have and finding the right information. There's a lot of focus on technology, and technology's got to change the classroom. And I think that it can, but it's not going to get rid of the teacher. It's not going to replace the teacher unless the teacher's only job is delivering content. In that case, sure. But we know that the teachers who connect with kids, who understand their goals and help them move at their own rate are the ones who are really making an impact on kids. So when we think about technology, it's not just the tools, it's how you use that tools to match those tools and resources to match kids with ideas, help them create content, and help them connect with the broader world beyond the classroom.
So I want to ask you this question of resources, and it comes to me, or came to me, because we were in a meeting yesterday, in our own CNI meeting, and it came up about the need to use research-based materials and resources. And there was a sort of a post that was printed, sent around the room about how a lot of teachers Google stuff now, and it may, you don't know what you're getting when you do that. However, what we know, a lot of what is considered research is still outdated. Take a peer review article, for example. When it's published, that study was conducted a year and a half prior to its release. So it may have a April, 3rd, 2018 date on it, but that research was done years ago. So it's not actually updated research. So where are teachers supposed to find that updated research that will assist them in moving their classroom forward?
I think the best place to look is in your classroom, is to look at your kids and to understand what's working. So, I love research, and I've spent my career understanding the impact of research on practice. But I would say that we have to think about the context. And as you pointed out, it could be 5 years, the research could be 5 years ago. And even if it was just yesterday, research that I do in my classroom or in my context in San Diego is not going to be the same as someone who's working in Indiana, Illinois. It depends where you are. It depends. My classroom is different than someone next door to me. So I think we have to really understand what research is saying, what the point is, and then take that information and make sense of it in our own context. Try some things out. So you said, where do teachers go? Where do leaders go? I think you go to people you're serving. You try some things out, you see what's working, you get their perspective, and you collect data, collect information, and figure out what your next steps are. I highlight even in the book that as a mom, you can find research on sleep schedules. You can say, let them cry it out, sleep train kids. You can also find research that says you need to be there every minute, and every time they cry, you pick them up and hold them. Well, those are two opposite ends of the spectrum, and I have to make sense as a mom of what that research is saying. I have to know my goals as a parent, and I have to know my kids and figure out the right way to make it work for my kid in that moment. And I think the same applies in our classrooms. You can find research that highlights and supports anything for the most part. You have to make sense of what your goals are. You have to be really clear. If you're trying to raise test scores and that's your only goal, you're going to have a different way of getting there than if you're trying to develop passionate, creative, thoughtful, inquisitive learners who will be successful in life. Those are different goals. And your aim and how you create those learning environments are going to differ based on what you want.
And I'm glad you just mentioned test scores. That's a great segue to this question, because so many schools are data driven nowadays, because they are looking and saying, look, we have, a third of our students who are less than proficient. They have these deficiencies in these skills, and they really curtail their curriculum and what they do to raise test scores. And with this data, comes all of these diagnostic tests and check-ins with students and curriculum based around it. And it may raise test scores, but it's robbing the joy of learning from our students. In your book, you wrote about the need to focus on the learner. What does that mean? And how can schools do so and still be successful within the rigged accountability system we all face?
Sure. this is the $1,000,000 question. And I think that I could say all day, don't worry about your test scores, just focus on kids. But the reality is we live in a system where test scores matter. But I think the irony is focusing on our test scores will never get us to the desired outcomes that I think we all really want. We want kids to be productive, lifelong learners. We want them to be successful. We want teachers and school leaders to find joy and to connect with kids. So I always encourage people to go back to, what is it that we want for our kids? What is it that we want for learners in our buildings? And going back to what does that look like? What does that sound like? And if we're clear about what we want, then how do we design those learning experiences to get there? How do we focus on the type of learning that really will develop those types of learners? You mentioned data-driven, and I think we can spend our days focused on what we've now termed as formative assessment. Formative assessment is huge, but it's basically about understanding what people know and where they are in relationship to the desired goals. But we've taken this and turned it this mass production of every 2 weeks you take a test on some narrowed curriculum. That was not what the research said worked with formative assessment. Research says formative assessment works because you're checking in on the learner and what they know and helping them move to where they need to be. These hyper-focused standardized test scores over and over again and breaking them up over the course of a year to give multiple tests, I don't think has proven that it's helped anyone improve. And I could be wrong. You might want to show me that I'm wrong, but I certainly don't think it's helped us to get to the larger goals of creating those more thoughtful, creative learners.
And it definitely doesn't work with deeper learning. The reality is, as educated as you and I are, and many people are, there are a lot of stuff that we learned in high school and undergrad that we do not know to this day.
No, so to that point, so I was sitting with a group of educators recently, and we were talking about their schedule. And they said, we want to have a more flexible schedule. We want to really support project-based learning, but it doesn't align with our AP scores. They said the schedule we want will facilitate the type of learning that we want to see in our schools. But if our kids have more than 2 months before their AP test, between their courses and the AP test, they'll forget everything. So I stopped them and I said, do you realize what you just said? That you're cramming for a test and you're focusing your school schedule and these kids' learning experiences so that they'll remember it and do well on a test, and you know that they're going to forget it 2 months later. Now, this might be a reality because test scores in college, and I get that, but I just want us to all step back and think, what is that saying about what we're doing in schools, that we know kids are going to forget things within a month or 2 months? What is the point of drill and kill and all this content if it won't be retained or used?
Well, on the short term, when they take their test in April or May, you are hoping that the scores go up, which increases your accountability with the state, moves you up, and you can look great to the state, to the community. But long term, if kids have that drop off that a lot of teachers talk about from the end of May to August or September, and then you're like, well, my gosh, I got to spend the first month of school getting you caught back up, then what did they really learn?
Right. Yeah, to your point, is that deep learning? Is that really meaningful learning? Or are we spending a lot of time with drill and kill that's not retained?
We know what we're doing.
We know. It's not an easy answer. It's not, you can't just flip a switch and fix it. But if we don't have these conversations about what we want for our kids, and I mean parents, I mean community members, I mean school leaders, teachers, involve the students. If we don't have these conversations, we will continue to perpetuate this old system that is not going to work. It's not working now, and it's not going to serve us in our future. So
That's
just
true.
keep having the conversations.
I hear you. I hear you. Now you have a chapter dedicated to culture, but throughout the book, in my opinion, you've been talking about culture throughout the entire book. And you talk about a culture of risk taking and entrepreneurship, innovation and iteration. What can schools do to design that kind of culture? And how can schools promote growth and agency beyond state standards?
Yeah, great question. I think the schools that I've seen who have done that, and the school that I highlight specifically in the book is Vista Innovation and Design Academy. They go by VITA. And Eric Shigela, who is their principal, has really taken the approach to create a school that's the center, the lifeblood of the community. Brought in parents, brought in students, and asked teachers, what do we want for kids? Kind of like you said, what are these things we want? And then allowed them to take risks. So, and he said, he doesn't just say, go take a risk. He models himself. He puts himself out there to share what he's learning, to try new things, brings teachers along to help them connect with other people. And I would say Eric is one of many leaders who is taking that risk first. You can't just tell other people, go do this, when you're not willing to do it yourself. If you're not willing to learn something new, if you're not willing to try something and make mistakes and learn from those mistakes, how in the world can you expect your teachers or your kids to feel like they can do that either? When I was teaching 7th grade, I had said to my students, they were, asking some questions. And I said, smart people ask questions. They don't know all the answers. And they were like, what? No one has ever said that before to us, and so they were shocked. They're so used to the teacher knowing everything, or at least pretending they do. And I think we have this culture in education that once we've got our degree, we should know it all. And that's just not feasible. There's so much happening and there's so much out there that we really need to be open and model that vulnerability to allow our kids to take that in also.
Mm. So you mentioned it earlier, and this is the cool thing about this book, people. Go buy this book, go buy this book. Is we are definitely teaching a mobile generation of learners now. And for a lot of our students, the smartphone or tablet is their first connected device. And these kids are just going about their daily lives with the power, the world's information held in this one handheld device. So we don't live in a time where there's gatekeepers of information. There are no longer people who are just the guardians of everything. You don't have to be like, oh, I don't have a home set of encyclopedias. What am I supposed to do? You have it all right here. But we also know with things like, fake news and bots and stuff, that you have to then understand context and be able to decide what is truth and what isn't.
Yeah.
And as more information becomes available and jobs change, what is the sort of new kind of learning should kids and schools be focusing on?
Yeah, I think one of the things I've learned is it's not about what information you can retain. It's more about what better questions can you ask? So I think the more the information, as you said, is there, but you have to be able to ask the right question. You have to be able to be a self-starter and exert that agency to learn how to learn. I mean, you could still sit back and let the world pass you by and not learn anything. You could just say, yes, all this information's here. Sure, you have a phone. But if you don't know how to use it to find the right information, if you aren't able to decipher between fake news and what's really happening, and actually, fake news, there's different points of view. If you just sit back and let information come to you, you will get a very one-sided view of the world because our social media is tailored that way. So if you aren't actually seeking out diverse perspectives, trying to understand people who are different than you, what they're thinking, why they're thinking that way, if you're not asking questions to better understand those around you, I think we are going to quickly do a disservice to our kids and not help them be more successful as they continue to navigate this world without us.
So I want to throw something out there for you and pose a little challenge. You know I love you, right? You know I love you, but I'm the book people by the book. So I'm reading in the book, and on this side you have sort of innovation, and you have these contradictions, right? And you talk about devices in the classroom, and then you have banning cell phones. If every kid has a Chromebook or an iPad or some kind of computer, why do they need the phone? Because I have seen personally, the phone is a problem because it's hard to regulate that phone, but you can tell students, close the lid on the laptop, or, turn this way so I can see on your screen. But the phone can be just, right here. Yeah. So why, when you talk about that mindset or how this doesn't match with this, why do you say that, and why should phones be allowed even though they have devices in the class?
So this is an interesting question that someone actually just challenged it on Twitter. And so what I am pushing, and what I think about, like, I have my phone sitting right here. I have my computer here. We are at 3-to-1 devices as adults in our workspace in many places. And phones become the most personal device where everything is there. The Chromebooks are very school oriented. And so I understand that they're a distraction. I am not going to say, like, if you're just more interesting, it's not going to be a distraction. But I do think that if we ban cell phones and really just say it's still control. So it's like, think of classroom management versus the notion of, like, what George Couros talks about, classroom leadership. The more you can empower people to exert agency and self-regulate, the better we're all going to be. So let me just back that up. If our students are going to have phones for the rest of their lives, we sure better help them understand how to use them more effectively. If you just ban them and say you can't use them because it's a distraction, where are they going to learn how to negotiate, when to use it, when to not, when to put it away? How are they going to develop those skills that many adults have not developed? Let me just be clear. This is not something that all the adults have figured out and the kids don't. But it is increasingly going to be part of our world. And those conversations, I think, are important. Instead of just saying, check your cell phone at the door and focus on what I want you to focus on, we're still trying to control the situation and not letting learners really figure out how to best navigate the situation. I mean, I sit in professional development sometimes, and people will say, put your computer at 45 degrees. So they're telling me I don't know how to manage my time and how to manage my resources. And I think when you put learners in the driver's seat, they need to be able to make decisions about how they use their devices. And it's not easy, but I think we need to start having those conversations instead of saying you can't have it. And I just think it's funny when you walk into classrooms, every kid's got a Chromebook and they're like, but cell phones are banned. It just is a mixed message.
Okay, well, I'm on the banning side.
So tell me why you're on the banning side. I mean, this is a conversation. I don't have all the right answers.
I am, because, with the Chromebook, for example, or any device that the teacher has assigned to students, the teachers, to some extent, you got to have some control. You can't have unfettered capitalism, and you can't have unfettered classroom kids. You got to be able to use stuff like Go Guardian or whatever to kind of see what's on their Chromebooks, because as much agency and leadership you're still going to have some who are just not going to do what they're supposed to do. And to be able to see, okay, what's going on, to say, oh, get back on task. You need that. You also, as a teacher, needs some stuff for documentation. So when you put that referral out there, you have to be able to say, hey, such and such was here, here, here. So that helps, cover you on that end. But I just have seen where, even though the device is here and they know what they're supposed to be doing here, they're still on this.
So I would agree with you on that. They're using it because they can, so they're sneaking it. So how do we teach people how to say, like, this is not an appropriate time? I'm not saying kids should be on their cell phones texting and communicating with their friends and just Snapchatting all day long. But when there's an opportunity to learn and create, some people like Chromebooks. Sometimes I use my cell phone to create things. Sometimes it's how I connect with people. So I think I just want to clarify, I'm not saying a free-for-all that kids should just be like having a party on their cell phones all day. But can we teach people when it's the right time to use them, allow them to bring, rather than like you're away from your cell phone for 8 hours a day, and we're not teaching you how to be mindful about when it's appropriate to use it and how to bring it in. When you have opportunities to learn and investigate, I might want to use my phone or my Chromebook. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Agree to disagree?
It makes sense. I still disagree because of what, I see on a day-to-day basis.
So I would push though, Dr. Will, are people teaching kids and having conversation with students about social media and about what to post and about how to connect and how to use their cell phones? Or is it more seen as a distraction, not a learning tool?
Well, I don't think those conversations are happening in every class because a lot of schools don't offer sort of that digital literacy part. So I understand that should be done. But, you still have kids who they've been in school since kindergarten. And the rules say, don't be disruptive. The rules say, keep your hands to yourself. The rules say this. They've had those rules for a very long time. And they still get to high school and act like they've never heard those rules before in their life. And
exactly. So what is that telling us about our systems? That maybe there's a way when we empower kids and we give them opportunities to have a democratic classroom where they're part of it and they don't get told this is what you have to do. I have seen kids rise up and be really good leaders and take ownership and responsibility when they feel like they have some say and some voice in the classroom. And I guess that's my point. Whether it's classroom management, whether it's whatever, there's always going to be distractions. Kids have passed notes. They've always done things to circumvent the authority when they feel like they have none. So the more we can put that ownership and responsibility on learners, I think that we can, we start to see them rise up.
Okay.
I did. I saw it. Like I think of my 7th graders, and we started the year 7th and 8th graders with their rules and how they wanted to run the classroom. And it always be, instead of just being me telling them, it became about us. And I always, same thing with grammar, right? We can make the same argument with grammar. Kids have been told since day one, capitalize your sentence, put a period at the end of the sentence, write neatly. You get to high school, you don't see that all the time because they don't care. So we can keep telling people as much as we want what to do, but until they have ownership, I don't see it really changing.
They may not care, but your paycheck will care one day if you don't, I mean, that's the one, when I talk to students, I don't approach them from this broader esoteric sort of thing. I try to keep it right here. Like if you don't get an education, if you don't do what you need to do and get that paper on the wall, you will have limited options.
Yes, you're right.
In your life. And because I know they like stuff, right? They love stuff. And so when you talk to kids, and, oh man, I got my J's on, I want to ride with the rims. I'll say, you want that stuff? Then you're going to need to earn a living that would allow you to pay for that stuff. So I try to keep it there because I know they're not, look, I'm 44. I'm thinking about a mortgage and investments and other stuff. I know they're not, my life is nowhere in their sort of zone of understanding or even thinking, but I try to kick it to them so they understand that it doesn't matter what the teachers say, doesn't matter what your parents say, you have to take full ownership over your life. Because
Yeah.
if you're 35 wearing a paper hat to work, you have no one to blame but you.
I agree.
Ooh, I like talking to you.
Me too.
So here's the last question. Your book is awesome. And I know you have your MOOC going on and you're writing your blog. We still have a lot of people, from the folks who run education, from the very top to the head state departments, to the district level and in the classroom. Education to them is a certain way, and it is for real one of the most. You sit down, teacher talk, here's a paper, here's some pencil and paper, here's a worksheet. You know, we may throw a little maker space in there. We're doing Genius Hour. We're getting real fancy. We're innovating over here. But, but education is the same. They don't see like how things, are changing. Even when online learning came on the scene as it did, it was first, for-profit universities, and people were like, I don't know about that. But then Harvard and MIT got together, and then all of a sudden, whether it's universities in California, Penn State, University of Maryland system, all of these schools that quote unquote, have that pedigree, now they're putting online degrees out there because they understand that that is the future. Mm-hmm. What do you say to those teachers, to those administrators who, look, they're just like, look, it is what it is. This is teaching. This is education. This is the holy grail of everything we know. And they just don't want to be bothered with it.
What do I say?
Yes.
I say I think I said this earlier. What is our goal? What type of students do we want? Our jobs are not to keep schools standing. Our jobs, the reason schools exist is to develop the learners that exist in them. And so as we look forward, not backward, what are the things that we want students to know and do? And I would say part of that is talking to people in industry. Teachers, educators don't often get out of school. We go through our own education, we go through college, and then we go back in the classroom and teach. And so historically, there's not a larger perspective on other jobs and industries and what the world of work is like. So I think getting connected to those jobs and what CEOs, people want for because you said you need a job. We want kids to get jobs. We want them to be successful. So if we aren't talking to people who are giving the kids the jobs and who are hiring them, we are doing our students a disservice. There needs to be a greater alignment between the skills and the knowledge and the mindsets that are really creating successful workers and citizens in the world of work. And how are we developing those in schools? And if we don't have those conversations and we keep perpetuating these experiences that we had as young learners or the schools that we wanted, we are going to miss the mark on preparing our kids for their current lives and the futures ahead of them, which also will come back on us because they're going to be leading the world. And if we don't have people who are skilled at doing the things that they need to do and navigating uncertain futures, it's going to come back on all of us.
Yes, and when it does, I'm moving to Canada. I should have said that. No, I just hope that people, understand that the world has changed.
It has changed, and it will continue to change at rapid paces.
Yeah, so I just want them, like, we got to make it happen so that school is different. Part of the reasons online learning to me was so great for me, but it's growing because it's learning anytime, anywhere. And it also, expands your knowledge base. So I didn't go to school with, these people from my area. Mm-hmm. There were superintendents in California that was in my cohort of APs in New Orleans, principals in Philadelphia. So as we discuss the information, all of these ideas and strategies and things that were going on in their classrooms, their schools, came into the classroom. We were all able to discuss those. So to me, I had a far greater experience because it wasn't just me relating on what was happening in mine. I was able to go, oh, so this happened here. What did you do there?
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Well, and I would say that, I would add that, Dr. Will, that like that's part of the thing I would say to educators too. Get out of your classroom, get out of your school building, get out of your district office and see what other people are doing. Because there are amazing educators right now who are making changes, who are really thinking differently about their classrooms. And so we need to leverage those models. We need to experience new versions of what's possible and what school can be, to think about what that means for our own context and the kids we serve.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Dr. Kati Marton, for coming to guest on the show. People, again, this is learner-centered innovation, right? Need you to go buy this book. Go to Amazon.
Thank you, Dr. Will. It's always a pleasure to connect with you. And I even like arguing with you.
I'm just like, get them out.
It's good. You push my thinking too. It's good. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you. People, you know how I do this. The video will be going up on YouTube. I need you to subscribe. The audio podcast is going up on iTunes and SoundCloud. Again, I need you to subscribe. Leave your comments because your boy's trying to get Oprah on the show. And I need her to know that I'm just dope like that. All right, people. So as always, invest in you, EDU. Peace.